The government's plans to tackle knife crime. New measures would force offenders to face up to the reality. The Conservatives call it knee-jerk politics. The Home Secretary says it's time to get tough.
What I'm interested in doing, if we catch people, particularly young people carrying knives, is making sure that they don't carry them again in the future.
The American bishop dividing the Anglican Church comes face to face with a protester in London. And England's cricketers have a frustrating day in the field as South Africa fight back at Lord's. Good evening. Their new untested plans aimed at deterring young people from carrying knives. The government says the measures for England and Wales will include young offenders visiting hospital wards where people are being treated for knife wounds and meetings with the families of stab victims. Opposition parties have dismissed the plans as knee-jerk politics. Last night there were 2 more fatal stabbings in Bristol and in Bolton. Here's John Brain.
Another man stabbed to death, another teenager arrested on suspicion of murder. This pub in Bolton was the scene of Britain's latest knife death. Paul Gilligan, who is in his 30s, was attacked last night, the 7th person to be fatally stabbed in just 3 days.
These criminals who are carrying knives today just do not understand the hurt that they're causing today. They're just not.
The overall rate of violent crime in the UK is actually falling, but increasing concern at the use of knives by young people is putting ministers under intense pressure. Today, the Home Secretary unveiled the government's latest plan to tackle the problem.
What I'm interested in doing, if we catch people, particularly young people carrying knives, is making sure that they don't carry them again in the future. There is nothing glamorous about carrying a knife. It doesn't help you to be more safe, and you will end up in serious trouble.
The proposals include making young offenders visit hospital casualty wards to see the injuries caused by knives.
In essence, it is a good idea, but my concerns are the practical issues. One's got to be careful about the victim's feelings, the relatives' feelings, and most importantly, there are other patients in the department that we need to be treating.
Young knife carriers will also be taken to meet victims' families to witness their suffering.
I certainly wouldn't like the person who's killed my son to visit me because it would be a sense of me giving him a reason, giving him an opportunity to justify him killing my son.
Another measure will be prison visits, during which teenagers will speak to offenders jailed for knife offences.
You just never know when a day will come where you're in a situation where you might need that tool.
Ramel Mackenzie has given up carrying a knife. He believes the answer isn't government intervention, but finding positive role models.
You just need mentors, but not just any mentors. People who've been through the system, people who know what they're talking about, who've seen things for their own eyes, who's come out of it. So anything that young person might be going through, they've been through, and they can say, I can simplify this.
This evening, the Conservatives dismissed the new proposals as half-baked. They've again called for mandatory prison sentences for knife carriers to try and prevent yet more people losing their lives. John Brain, BBC News.
Well, let's go live to Westminster now and hear from our political correspondent, Rita Chakrabarti. Rita, what sense are you getting of how these new plans would actually work in practice?
Well, that's a very good question and not one that many can answer. The Home Office says that 1 or 2 of these measures, such as the prison visits, have been used before, but they haven't been piloted in any formal sense. And the idea of visits to hospital to see stab victims is completely new and completely untested. So we don't know how that's going to work. We don't know how stab victims might react to taking part in such schemes. The Home Office is quite clear about its intention. It wants to use shock tactics to jolt would-be offenders into a greater awareness. But there's a strong note of caution from the former head of the Youth Justice Board, Rod Morgan, who says that schemes where offenders come face to face with their actual victims can be successful, but more general shock tactics like these have a poor record.
As we were hearing from John's report, the Conservatives are calling these half-baked proposals. How would you gauge the overall reaction, though, to what the government's unveiled?
Well, the Tories are saying this isn't tough enough. Their own policy could, I suppose, put a great deal of pressure on prison places if they were to assume that everybody who was convicted of carrying a knife were to go to prison. In terms of whether or not these proposals are half-baked or piecemeal, well, I think ministers have been working on them for some time. But I think there's little doubt that they have been driven by events and driven by public concern. These details were meant to come out on Tuesday as part of a much bigger announcement about youth crime generally. And you get the impression that the huge concern about the recent series of stabbings has pushed Number 10 and the Home Office into making this announcement earlier than intended and with much less detail than you might have expected. Mind you, ministers will feel that that's worth it if they get a good response from the public.
Rita, for now, thanks very much. Rita Chakrabarti, our political correspondent. A protester has disrupted a sermon given this evening by the world's first openly gay Anglican bishop. Gene Robinson, who's the Bishop of New Hampshire, was speaking at a church in London when he was heckled. He's here in Britain to try to influence a landmark church leaders conference that's taking place this week. Let's join our religious affairs correspondent Robert Piggott, who was there to hear the bishop this evening. Robert?
Yes, Gene Robinson's presence here in Britain was always going to be controversial. Many Anglicans hold him personally responsible for bringing the communion to the brink of a permanent split. He's had threats against his life in the past, and he's travelling around Britain with a security minder staff. And some sort of small protest was expected outside the church here at St Mary's in Putney. But what happened in the sermon itself took everyone by surprise.
More than 1 billion people who today are striving to survive on less than $1 a day.
He's the man at the centre of a historic split in Anglicanism, so it was a packed house in Putney. Bishop Robinson berated Anglicans for their preoccupation with sexuality when there were far worse problems in society, and was shouted down.
Heretics like you preach the gospel, but you depart from it.
Before the service, Bishop Robinson had acknowledged the divisions caused by his attempts to get homosexuality accepted.
I'm deeply pained over all of the difficulty that this has caused, but I have to say I believe that this is where God is leading the whole church, just as God led us to the full inclusion of people of color and of women and people in wheelchairs and any number of people who had previously been marginalized.
My brothers and sisters in Christ, greet your new bishop coadjutor.
Gene Robinson has become the inspiration for Anglicans who want to rethink what the Bible teaches for a modern age. His male partner was the first to greet him after his ordination as bishop. His former wife and 2 adult daughters also took part. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, invited almost all the Anglican Communion's 880 bishops to the Lambeth Conference. But Bishop Gene Robinson was left off the list.
Take my words and replace them with your words. Take my heart, replace them with your heart.
The uninvited guest made it clear this evening that he would go anyway.
I don't think that the bishops should be allowed to meet and not be reminded by my presence and the presence of many other people that gay and lesbian people are sitting in their pews all over the world, not just in North America, not just in Britain.
Traditionalist Anglicans say Bishop Robinson is a danger to the church.
It undermines this wonderful Christian institution of the family. We really are very pro marriage and the family. And to let loose homosexual practice will begin to undermine that. So I think it's very serious indeed.
Battle lines are being drawn for more bitter argument inside the church. Well, Gene Robinson presents himself as the little guy sticking up for an oppressed minority, but many traditionalists believe that actually he's on a mission to change the very character and beliefs of the church. And I think that that's why this bishop from a provincial backwater 3,500 miles away stirs such passions here in Britain. And I think it goes some way to explaining why the disruption took place at the church here tonight.
Robert, thank you. In Afghanistan, 9 American soldiers have been killed in clashes with Taliban militants near the border with Pakistan, one of the worst losses for coalition forces since operations began. Well, our correspondent Martin Patience is in the Afghan capital now. Martin, how did this happen?
Well, we understand that this attack took place at about 4:30 in the morning. A group of up to 40 or 50 Taliban militants attacked the base. They were heavily armed. They had small guns fire, and they had rocket-propelled grenades and homemade mortars. Now, there have been reports that dozens of Taliban insurgents were killed in the fighting. And this incident took place in a part of the country where there's been a dramatic increase in the number of Taliban attacks. And the latest incident marks what has been a terrible time for foreign troops here in Afghanistan, with last month, June, being the bloodiest on record.
Martin, thank you. Here, the Ministry of Defence has confirmed that an investigation is underway into allegations that British soldiers sexually assaulted a 14-year-old Iraqi boy. The incident is claimed to have taken place at a British base near Basra 5 years ago. Brian Hanrahan reports.
This latest allegation dates back to May 2003, when British troops were trying to stop looting from Camp Breadbasket near Basra. The British base was being used to feed Iraqis after the collapse of Saddam Hussein's government. One of those who says he was caught by British soldiers was a 14-year-old boy trying to steal dried milk powder. The boy, who's still concealing his identity, made a statement saying he was in a group of 4 youths who were beaten by British troops and then sexually mistreated. Because of the difficulties of working in Iraq, the BBC has no independent evidence connected with this case. But at the time, a number of photos were taken at Camp Breadbasket, showing British troops humiliating and abusing Iraqis. Several soldiers were court-martialed and jailed. Now 10 Iraqis are bringing claims for compensation against the British, and the Iraqi campaigner in the case says the boy wants to join them.
2 of the soldiers took the 4 of them to a hangar, and they closed the door and they subjected them to that ordeal. That's what his account was for, and he noticed one of the soldiers was filming, actually.
You've got to treat everyone you've captured humanely. No exceptions, no ifs, no buts.
The British Army has improved training in the proper way to treat captives. This video is part of the effort to stop more incidents like the beating to death of Baha Musa, the hotel receptionist whose family were awarded £2.8 million compensation this week.
Can I start by...
The Ministry of Defence says it isn't complacent.
We have had tens and tens of thousands of military people going through operational theatres, operating in the most dangerous and the most difficult and most stressful conditions, and virtually all of them have behaved impeccably. That has not universally been the case, and when it is not the case, we are first amongst those who want to see it dealt with.
The Ministry of Defence acknowledges that they know of this latest allegation and are investigating it. Deeply wounding though the accusations are, the British Army accepts that they must be faced. It says that any behaviour of the kind alleged would be completely wrong, and if proved, must be punished. Brian Hanrahan, BBC News at the Ministry of Defence.
The Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert says his country and the Palestinians have never been closer to reaching a peace deal. He and the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas are among 40 heads of government attending the first summit of the EU and Mediterranean countries in Paris. From there, here's our Europe editor, Mark Mardell.
A lot hangs on this for the French president. The Mediterranean Union is his baby, his brainchild, and many are suspicious it's all pomp and no substance. But he's decided it's about the most ambitious of projects, peace in the Middle East. There are 44 leaders here from the European Union, North Africa and the Middle East itself, and he told them the eyes of the world were upon them and asked, are you up to the challenge of peace?
Everyone is going to have to make an effort, just as Europeans did to bring to an end the deadly spiral of violence that for centuries brought barbarism to the heart of European civilization.
Two men who could make that vision a reality, the leader of the Palestinian Authority and the Israeli Prime Minister, met the president in a group hug, and the meeting was apparently every bit as warm and energetic as Mr. Sarkozy's grip on their hands.
There are obstacles, there are problems, but it seems to me we've never been closer to a deal than today.
And at that, the French president grabbed their hands and pushed them together into something almost resembling a symbolic handshake, although why these long-stalled talks should be any nearer a conclusion now isn't at all obvious. The leaders meeting beneath this glass roof will also be talking about pollution and transport and solar power. But President Sarkozy has saved himself from mockery by making the main aim something that few can disagree with, ending the world's most intractable conflict. Mark Mardell, BBC News, Paris.
Let's take a look now at the day's sport with Selina Hinchcliffe. Hello there.
Hello, thank you. Hello. It's been a frustrating day in the field for England's cricketers, who were hoping to clinch an early victory against South Africa at Lord's, but it wasn't to be. Centuries from Graham Smith and Neil Mackenzie have given South Africa a chance of saving the match. They closed on 242 for 1, trailing England by 104 runs. Andy Swiss reports.
England began the day with a visible spring in their step. Victory seemed theirs for the taking, but not if you forget to appeal. That early swish from Graham Smith looked innocuous enough, but replays showed he actually hit it.
Thought I heard something.
He could have been out, but he wasn't, and he made England pay. Together with Neil Mackenzie, South Africa grafted through the morning, scoring just 54 runs. A few spectators probably wished they'd stayed in bed. England's players even joined in a slow hand clap after lunch. But instead of distracting the South Africans, it only seemed to distract themselves.
Oh, there we go.
That pretty much summed up England's day, and this summed up Graham Smith's. A typically unglamorous way to reach his century, hardly thrilling, but hugely effective. Finally, though, at 5:30, Jimmy Anderson made the breakthrough.
And it's taken.
Smith out for 107, England's relief was palpable. But Mackenzie refused to budge. Just before the close, he notched up his century, batting the entire day and encapsulating South Africa's resolve. England won't lose this, but from a seemingly commanding position, they may yet have to settle for a draw. Andy Swiss, BBC News.
Northern Ireland's Graham McDowell won the Scottish Open at Loch Lomond today. His two-shot victory earned him a cheque for £500,000, and he now looks almost certain to make Europe's Ryder Cup team. Englishman Simon Khan finished 5th. He secured his place at the Open next week by getting down in 2 shots from the edge of the green at the 18th. And at the British Olympic trials in Birmingham, Jay Johnson continued her comeback by winning the women's long jump, although her winning jump of 6 metres 30 was some way short of her personal best. Heptathlete Kelly Southerton, who's warming up for Beijing by competing in 4 field events, finished 2nd. That's all the sport for now. Michelle.
Selina, thanks very much. Now, he may be one of the biggest selling names in the art world, responsible for graffiti all over the globe, but the true identity of Banksy has always remained a secret. Now, though, it's claimed the man behind the street art may finally have been unmasked. We sent our arts correspondent David Silito to investigate.
To many, it's urban blight, but street art does have its heroes.
And the most famous one, well, you can see one of his works over there. It's Banksy.
Witty and often political, his works are now widely admired and preserved.
They have actually protected this behind plastic to stop anyone stealing the graffiti.
But who is he? Well, today the Mail on Sunday claimed he's a former public schoolboy from Bristol, Robin Gunningham. His spokesperson, though, wouldn't confirm or deny it. And at this gallery, which specialises in street art, no one was giving anything away.
I'm not going to speculate and say that is him.
Same on my side.
And then the owner of the building where Banksy painted the angel.
That's what he's supposed to look like. I don't think so, no.
But one street artist didn't entirely deny it.
Everyone's asking, do you think Banksy's been unmasked today?
Possibly.
Possibly?
It's possibly, but I was in a show with him a few years ago, and I asked the curator afterwards, I went, was Banksy here then? And he says, yeah. You see this photo? He stood on the end, a few people down for you, but he's so inconspicuous. Kind of, you don't quite notice if he's there or not.
So, is this a Gunningham? Well, the money's in the mystery, and many want to keep it. A Banksy. David Silito, BBC News.
And that's it from us for now. I'll be back with more from the newsroom at 10 o'clock tonight. Now on BBC One, though, it's time to join our news teams where you are this evening.
Good evening from BBC London News. I'm Alice Bandukravi. Tens of thousands of commuters have had their Oyster cards corrupted after a technical problem yesterday. The fault was with the card readers where people touch in and out. It means there could be problems for many tomorrow morning, as Alison Freeman explains.
The cashless system that's meant to keep London moving. But yesterday it went seriously wrong. 60,000 people's Oyster cards now don't work and will have to be replaced. Anybody who put their card on a reader between 5:30 and 9:30 yesterday morning has fallen victim to a technical glitch that rendered the cards unusable.
Well, yesterday morning I paid £10 to top up my Oyster card, and then when I got to central London, it wouldn't go through the system. They told me that the whole system had gone down, and I had to kind of just go through the system, and every time I went to a new place they would let me through.
Transport for London don't know what caused the problem, but they've got 150 people working to make sure everybody's cards are replaced as soon as possible.
It is very embarrassing for TfL. Oyster is a very secure and very reliable system. This is an unusual fault. It's the first time that it's happened in 6 years. We hope that it's never going to happen again, and we're taking all action to do that.
But it's not just the card users that have been hit. There's also been problems with the top-up machines in shops.
I haven't had no trade from Oyster at all, and I'm estimating maybe at least 200 quid at least I've lost in 2 days alone.
So far, 10,000 people have had their Oyster cards replaced, but there's another 50,000 people still affected. And if they all turn up during rush hour tomorrow, Transport for London's promising free travel. They've also tried to let commuters who are affected know, but it will still come as a surprise to some tomorrow morning. Alison Freeman, BBC London News.
Well, the newly appointed Deputy Mayor for London, Tim Parker, says bus and tube fares could go up in line with inflation. Mayor Boris Johnson's right-hand man is looking at ways to make Transport for London more efficient. He said in the current economic climate, Londoners want their services at the minimum cost.
We're looking very carefully at TfL funding, and we won't shirk from taking difficult decisions if difficult decisions have to be taken.
A 17-year-old is the sixth person to be charged with the murder of Shakilis Townsend in South London last week. 16-year-old Shakilis was beaten and stabbed to death outside a block of flats in Thornton Heath. 5 other teenagers, including one girl, have been charged with his murder. A festival billed as the capital's biggest free music event has been taking place at Finsbury Park today. Rise aims to promote London's diversity, but organisers were criticised for dropping the anti-racism message, which has been their theme in previous years.
It is important. I think it's very important in London, particularly where you've got a multinational and multicultural society, that to have anti-racist message going out.
It doesn't defeat the main objective of the festival, because still many different people come together.
This weekend sees the completion of 12 months of work in Newham to involve residents in regenerating their green spaces. The Year of Action kicked off last June with the Springwatch Festival and finished today at the Mayor's Show. During the year, over 20,000 local people have been involved. Almina Ahmed has more.
Working hard creating new habitats on the Greenway in Newham. These volunteers are collecting dry timber to make nests for stag beetles, a species that has been on the decline in the capital.
Urban parks are so neatly looked after because we remove all the dead standing wood. They don't have the niche where to place their eggs for the larvae to live.
It's all part of the BBC's Breathing Places campaign, which aims to inspire people to care for their local green spaces.
We've had over 23,000 people involved. They've planted over 18,000 bulbs, 3,500 trees. By doing that, we've managed to get 5 of our local parks green flag status. The children have made over 500 nest and bat boxes. It's just an incredible amount of work that people have done.
Given that a tenth of Newham's population have got involved, the council has pledged to plant 2,012 trees every year till the Olympic Games. It's hoped this will inspire other councils to have their own Year of Action. Almina Ahmed, BBC London News.
Now let's see what the weather's got in store with Liam Dutton.
Good evening. It's been quite a nice day today. It's been mainly dry. We've had the sunshine as well. But once the sun sets tonight, quite cool for the time of year, particularly outside of town. But it will be dry under clear and starry skies. A fine end to the day then with plenty of evening sunshine. Overnights tonight it will be dry with clear and starry skies. Maybe the odd mist patch forming here and there, and quite a cool night, locally down to 10 or 11 outside of town, but 14 in the centre of town itself. So a cool and bright start to Monday morning, blue skies, a lot of sunshine. I think the cloud tending to increase throughout the day, but it will stay dry with further bright or sunny spells, and very warm as well, temperatures up to 22 to 24 degrees. Now Tuesday, it's another fine looking day, dry, sunny and very warm with a high of 24, maybe 1 or 2 showers at first on Wednesday and more in the way of cloud on Thursday. Goodbye.
Well, that's it from us, but we'll be back tomorrow morning in breakfast here on BBC One from 6. Until then, do have a very good evening.